The storm clouds of God's judgment are gathering. I think the question is, how severe will the storm be? How will we fare individually? And what will happen after the storm cloud hits our nation? We'll talk about it in today's program.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
The lion has roared. Who shall not fear? That comes from one of the minor prophets who spoke of the coming judgment of God. Jeremiah talked about the word of God being like a hammer. And as we watch international news, national news, the crisis at our southern border, the Ebola plague that looks like it's emerging and, heaven forbid, may jump continents, I feel like I'm reading out of Deuteronomy chapter 28 or out of Leviticus chapter 18. And I quote, "But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you this day, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading trough. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body and the fruit of your ground, the increase of your cattle, and the young of your flock. Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will send upon you curses, confusion, and frustration in all that you undertake to do until you are destroyed and perish quickly on account of the evil of your doings, because you have forsaken me." Now, these threats, if you continue reading in Deuteronomy chapter 28, they're very specific. God talks about drought. He talks about famine. He talks about diseases. He talks about becoming a slave to foreign nations in debt and and possibly militarily. I encourage you to read it. And it says, in later on in the chapter, it says, because you refused to serve the Lord joyfully, then you're going to serve your enemies in fear and in anguish. When you look at the Roman Empire or the Grecian Empire, but let's focus on the Roman Empire, an empire that lasted nearly 1,000 years, you see longevity, you see debauchery, you see tyranny, and you see a collapse from within until finally the judgment of God came. And upon the ash heap of Rome stood the church. Okay? People no longer feared the Caesars. Caesars were no longer worshipped as God. The church stood standing on the rubble. God brought judgment on the nation of Rome, brought judgment on their false gods, their false idols, and the church was left standing. Our false idols in America, think with me how they plague our landscape. Bred in circuses, these false deities in sports and in, not that they claim to be gods, but because we idolize them. Because so many of our young people are just all but worshiping these sports heroes, movie people, music people, many of them who are living and advocating debauched, immoral lives and lifestyles. We have the blood of 55 million children crying out from the ground for God's judgment. If you read 2 Kings chapter 24, you see that the nation of Judah, Israel, was destroyed and sent captive to Babylon, and Solomon's temple was destroyed because they shed so much innocent blood in Jerusalem. The king Manasseh, he practiced child sacrifice. And the Bible says that they offered their sons and daughters to demons, and they shed innocent blood, and the land was cursed because of the blood, and then God's judgment came. America is committing most, if not all, of the abominable crimes and sins that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, that happened in pagan Greece, that happened in pagan Rome. How can we think that we can escape the storm of God's wrath? How can we delude ourselves? And I mentioned, and I started off talking about the longevity of the Roman Empire. The American era, at best, could be considered 70 years. I mean, that's not even a really long life. Okay? Prior to World War II, London was the center of political and economic power, not Washington. After the war, we were propped up by the victorious Allies with the Bretton Woods system, and we became the world's banker. Our manufacturing bases were roaring. We did not have bombs going off in our cities like the French and the British and the Germans did, and the Japanese. So we were poised, kind of put in that position to become world leaders. But we weren't ready. It was not a part of our history. And I think it was like giving the keys to the car to a drunken teenager. I'm going to take a break and try and prepare you to be ready and to be a voice crying in the wilderness. Because how we function over the coming months and years as we see the storm of God's judgment descend upon us, how we behave is going to determine what happens in the midst of judgment and after the judgment. Don't go away.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah?
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
A few years ago, I wrote a political spoof track to basically outrage people and to try and wake them up, okay? And it was called The Negro Project. And it was candidate Smith who was running for office and wanted to restore slavery and first segregation and then possibly slavery. And he said, I would never own a slave, and I'm not a single issue candidate. And he had a really comprehensive platform involving the economy and public works and international relations. And the design of the political flyer was to get people so enraged. Who would write this? How dare they? And so then I said, okay, are you mad? And obviously the reader would have been mad. And I said, do you think you could vote for a racist? For someone who wanted to restore slavery in America? And obviously the answer would be no. And I said, so that's a deal breaker for you. That's a single issue that just breaks the deal, even if you agree with them on every other issue. Yeah, of course. Okay. Well, which is worse, slavery or murder? At least a slave can get free. A slave can run away. Slave rebellions have happened where the slaves rise up and win their freedom. You can't unmurder someone, okay? Murder is a far more heinous crime than slavery. So here we have Christians in America who would never vote for someone who was a racist, never vote for somebody who advocated segregation or slavery again. But they'll vote for a baby killer. They'll vote for somebody who will rip the arms and legs off of an innocent human being and throw the discarded human remains, made in the image of God, by the way, into a garbage dump or flush them into a sewer. They'll vote for that person. Christian people will vote for that person. Pastors, priests, Catholics, evangelicals. So we've brought this on ourselves. And if you study the book of Judges and the book of 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, the historical books of the Bible, you see the judgment of God coming upon the nation of Israel and surrounding nations for that matter, if you read in the books of the prophets. You see the judgment of God coming on those nations often because their leaders were wicked. Obama is a wicked man, okay? Biden is a wicked man. Justice Kennedy is an evildoer, okay? Appointed by a Republican, a Roman Catholic, Justice Kennedy, okay? These are wicked people. They're evildoers. They're tyrants. Their hands are drenched with blood. But we put them there. Do you understand? We put them there. And if you study the scriptures, you'll see that wickedness comes to the nations usually through their leaders. And reform and revival, as some people want to call it, also comes from the leadership down. There's a lot of people that say we need a revival, we need a grassroots revival. Well, I would love a grassroots revival. I'm not going to gainsay it. But if you study history, first scriptural history and then church history, you will see that the end of wickedness and the conversion of large amounts of people and the cessation of heinous crimes such as child killing or human sacrifice or slavery, it's top down, friend. So you have wickedness coming top down and righteousness coming top down. But once the wickedness that comes top down is entrenched, then the judgment of God comes on everybody, okay? Then we all suffer for it. Now, some people in America are preaching a deluded gospel. It's not a false gospel, it's delusional. Well, the Lord's going to just show mercy on all of us. Well, you know what? He sent the armies of Babylon to destroy his own temple that bore his own name. Okay? Well, but not everyone was killed. That's true. But they all felt the judgment. I mean, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, they all went to Babylon in chains. Okay, the Babylonian captives still had to cross huge tracts of horrible desert to get to Babylon in captivity. All right? It was horrific. So even the survivors had to feel the judgment of God. And these were people who would never have killed their own babies. Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children and other righteous men and women who made it to Babylon, they weren't killing their babies, but their houses were destroyed. They lost all of their chattel goods. Solomon's temple was still destroyed. They couldn't worship in the temple. So you and I have to understand that depending what happens in America, if God turns the sky to brass and we have a real food crisis, or like with these massive fires that are destroying hundreds and hundreds of homes, the good and the bad people, the wicked people are losing their homes and the righteous are losing their homes. Okay? I've got to take a break. I'll be right back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. The storm clouds of God's anger, His displeasure, are gathering. You don't have to be a prophet to see some of the signs of the times and to feel the tremors. Now, some people in our country are so drunk with bread and circuses, they're so dissipated in their soul, that as long as they have their tickets to their favorite sport club or their sport team, or they've got the latest movie, or whatever it is, they've got their bread and circuses, they don't care. But there will come a time when the bread and circuses are no longer there. You can go to the Colosseum, okay? You can see the ruins. The Colosseum had the games, the bread and circuses provided by the Caesars, but then it became a ruin. The Forum in Rome became a ruin. Delphi, the center of Greece, Grecian worship, became a ruin. And by the way, the pillars of the pagan temples in Delphi and the pillars of the pagan temples in Rome, in the Forum, were taken away, and the very rocks were taken away to build the churches. Okay? The pagan rocks cry out that Jesus is Lord. So as God's judgment swept through the Roman Empire, which had, of course, incorporated the Grecian Empire, it was the church that was left standing. But the church was strong back then. The church was proclaiming that Jesus is Lord. The Christians were being martyred. They were not afraid to say that Caesar was not God. They were not afraid to decry the wickednesses and the abominations that were rife in the Roman Empire. Compare that to today. Just flip through the dial on your television to some of the Christian networks and look at the bouffant hairdos. Look at the prosperity gospel being preached. Look at the false hope being given. Look at the manipulation. So much of the Christian entertainment, and it is entertainment, they call it ministry, but a lot of it is entertainment, it's drivel or it's actual falsehood, and some of it might even border on heresy. Okay? If they had stood in my counsel, the prophet said, God said through the prophet, he said, if they had stood in my counsel, they would have turned my people from their sins. If they had stood in my counsel, they would have turned my people from their sins. Woe to those that are at ease in Zion, who skillfully play like David and who drink wine by the bowls full, who are not grieving the ruin of Joseph. I was listening to a Christian song the other day, and my heart broke. And maybe we could, it was drivel. It was drivel, and it was about, I just need to be happy, and this is a happy day, and it was all about this internal me, I, happy, happy, happy. And I thought, you know what I should do? I should take that song and put images of Hitler and Jews being killed in concentration camps and babies being butchered in America, and heinous crimes being committed by Muslims against Christians, and play those images while that happy, happy, happy song is playing. And then you can see how much drivel it is. There comes a time where, like Psalm 138 says, by the waters of Babylon we sat down and wept. There our tormentors demanded us songs of mirth, but they couldn't sing and they couldn't play because their hearts were filled with grief, because the judgment of God had come. We could be grieving now, and we could help forestall some of the severity of the judgment of God if we would be God's servants and God's heralds, and we would be tearing our hearts and not just our garments. I'll be right back. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years, and sadly we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it. It is better to have an ambitious plan than none at all. Sir Winston Churchill. The question is this: now is judgment going to come? It's coming, all right? The question is, will it be a judgment unto annihilation or a judgment unto restoration? Will it be a judgment like the 10 northern tribes of Israel endured when they were completely obliterated and dissipated throughout the Assyrian Empire? Or will it be a judgment unto restoration like Judah and the southern tribes who went to Babylon and then came back? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what a post-judgment America looks like. I can read my scriptures. I have the foresight of hindsight. I can see the threatenings of Leviticus chapter 18 and Deuteronomy chapter 28. And it's scary. All right? It's scary. But if we are going to be judged unto restoration, it's going to be because there was a remnant of people who were crying out against the evil and who were fighting against the evil and who were giving God a reason to show mercy. Okay? Remember with Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham said, "You're going to kill everyone, even the righteous with the wicked? What if there's 50 good people?" And God said, I'll spare the city for 50. And then 40, 30, 20, 10. I'll spare the city for 10. Well, God got there. When he sent the angels, he couldn't find 10 righteous people. So he destroyed the place. That was a judgment unto annihilation. Will we give God a reason to show mercy? Will we cry out? Listen, I'm a dad. I've got small children, all right? I want to love my wife and my kids, and I want to have a happy, peaceful life. I do. But we do not have the right to live a peaceful, calm, normal life in the midst of howling blood crying to God from the ground. Just try and picture having a normal, happy life in Nazi Germany while Jews are being taken by the trainload to be killed, or coming banging on your door, begging to be hid and for you to help them. Can you say, "Oh, I just need a happy life and give me a happy song, me, no, come on." So there's got to be some type of internal revolution in our hearts, some type of revival. We get a hold of the things that are really on God's heart and mind, and then we make ourselves available to Him to do what He wants to do. Maybe then there'll be judgment unto restoration.